So today we'll be looking at a brief overview of the lungs. We'll be looking at the left lung, the right lung, the bronchial tree, and the pleura, namely the parietal pleura and the visceral pleura. So the lungs are separated by each other through the mediastinum. They are attached to the root of the lungs, namely the hilum. There are 5 things attached at the hilum, namely the bronchus, the pulmonary arteries, lymphatic vessels, superior and inferior pulmonary veins, and pulmonary plexus of the nerves. Let's get started. So, taking a look at the left lung. The left lung is long and narrow. It has 2 lobes, and there is 1 fissure in the left lung, namely the oblique fissure. There are 6 impressions in the left lung, namely the trachea, the first rib, arch of the aorta, esophagus, brachiocephalic vein, and cardiac impression. Please take note of the lingula in the left lung. It is in an inferior projection of the superior lobe of the left lung. Taking a look at the right lung now. It is wide and short. There are 3 lobes in the right lung. The fissures are 2 fissures instead of 1 fissure such as in the left lung. So the 2 fissures in the right lung are the oblique and the horizontal fissures. There are 8 impressions in the right lung instead of 6 impressions such as in the left lung. These 8 impressions in the right lung are as follows: the first rib, esophagus, brachiocephalic vein, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, arch of azygos vein, cardiac impression, and trachea. Whenever doing the lung, it is important to take note of the bronchial tree. There are 10 steps in this splitting, from the trachea all the way to the alveoli. The first is the trachea. This is the main tube where the air will go in. It will then split into the primary bronchus. This may also be called the main or principal bronchus. So this is a splitting or bifurcation of the trachea into the 2 parts, left and right. It then splits into the lobar bronchi, also known as the secondary bronchi. Then into the segmental bronchi, also known as the tertiary bronchi. It then goes to the bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, respiratory bronchiole, the alveolar duct, the alveolar sac, and lastly, it reaches the alveoli. Before ending this short YouTube video, it is important to take note of the pleura. So the parietal pleura, we will be taking a look at its innervation, blood supply, and lymphatic drainage. A quick overview. The cupula is supplied by the T1. Costal surface is supplied by the intercostal nerves, namely T2 to T11. The mediastinal surface, the phrenic nerve. The diaphragmatic surface, for central part it's the phrenic nerve, and the peripheral part it's T7 to T11. You can remember the phrenic nerve by remembering parietal pleura starts with a P, and phrenic nerve also starts with a P. The blood supply of the parietal pleura is the intercostal arteries and veins. The lymphatic drainage includes parasternal, diaphragmatic nodes, posterior mediastinal, and posterior intercostal. And lastly, we will be taking a quick look at the visceral pleura, the innervation, blood supply, and lymphatic drainage. A quick overview. The innervation is as follows. The sympathetic fibers is the sympathetic trunks. Parasympathetic fibers is the vagus nerve. The autonomic innervation for the pulmonary plexus. The blood supply is as follows. The bronchial arteries and veins. Lymphatic drainage includes the bronchopulmonary nodes. An important note is that the parasympathetic fibers are supplied through the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a cranial nerve, namely cranial nerve 10. Also note that visceral pleura starts with a V. Vagus nerve also starts with a V, which is also a memory trick.